Ask me, I don't think there's much more important in society than the way we keep our children safe. And lots in the news today because it's all about the amount of child sex abuse material that is it's just disgusting. It seems to be all corners of the internet, but in particular, Category A, so the most extreme form of content, has doubled since apparently 2020. And Sajid Javid, he's spoken out, he's criticising the government and some of the tech bosses, saying that they're failing to stop this. He wants to do things like double the maximum jail sentences. He wants 20 years for criminals who've live-streamed this kind of abuse from abroad. And he wants a legal duty on tech firms, basically to try and stop this kind of grotesque content getting online in the first place. Tougher age verification as well to try and protect children. I have to say, whilst I don't disagree with some of those measures, they don't go far enough for me, quite frankly. For me personally, what I would want to see is if you are viewing, and let's just be absolutely clear here, there's no such thing as child porn. That doesn't exist. There is only child abuse. So when you watch this material, be under no illusion, you're looking at a crime scene. So I would absolutely support tougher penalties, but I also think if that is the kind of content that you feel yourself gravitating towards, then I think, quite frankly, you should be chemically castrated. That is what I would want to see put into practice. Anyway, Connor, where do you stand on it all?
I absolutely agree with that. I think most of the time sex offences are let off too lightly in society. They did the numbers on this from December 2020 to 2021, and of course there's going to be a bump because people let out of lockdown. But overall sexual crimes went up 22%. I think we're taking far too soft an approach. I think the idea that Labour's rolling out, unfortunately, I don't know if you're going to disagree with this, but the idea that all we need to do is go into schools and teach young boys to respect women and have consent. Unfortunately, you can't teach some rapists just not to rape. All you can do is deter them from doing such a heinous crime by making an example out of the people that do it, be that chemical castration or the death penalty. The concern I have about what Sajid Javid has put forth, however, is in the way that he wants to tackle the online material. He thinks it's the online harms bill. Now, the problem is the online harms bill can be a Trojan horse for doing all sorts of other things in that. And what he says there, he wants to end end-to-end encryption. Now, that is an issue for the private transmission of this child sexual exploitation material and for outlets like Mastodon, the Twitter alternative, who have encrypted servers that you can't ban accounts on, like Elon Musk took it all off of Twitter. Well, 2 of the top 3 servers on Mastodon were these servers that were exchanging this material. So it's a real problem. But to then end end-to-end encryption for private users who aren't going to do this is quite a heavy-handed way of doing it, and I don't necessarily trust the government not to overreach in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that he talks about is the online harms bill. It tries to protect children from content such as self-harm and all the rest of it, but I think what it's pushing for is that some of these tech bosses would be held liable if you have these kind of images on your servers. And actually, I do think that could be an added incentive for these guys because they're very, very quick. If you was to post anything about a COVID vaccine, you'd be off those platforms quicker than a quick thing from Quickland. So they have the abilities to check what people are doing and kick off those people. So they should be leveraging them in this direction. Atul, what do you make to it all?
No one's going to disagree with stronger penalties. As you say, it's disgusting, vile. I'd make 3 points. Number one, what Labour's proposing actually is an increase in the number of police officers. There's a missing element in what Sajid Javid is talking about. There's a missing element in this discussion. It is important for deterrence to have tougher sentences, but unless you are sure unless you have a reasonable expectation of being caught, unless there are more coppers looking, committed to this, there's going to be a problem because actually. But
what kind of police officers was Labour actually proposing? Because I thought it was what are they called? The PCSOs. Those PCSOs, they're not going to be the ones sitting detecting serious child sex abuse online.
The problem at the moment, one of the chief problems at the moment we have with the police force is that the police officers that are there, the full-time police officers, are spread so thinly, doing multiple different things. If you can take
these are specialist units, aren't they?
Yeah,
People
they are.
That look into
No, they are. But if you can take some of that work away, you can refocus some police. And actually, it probably does require an extension of resources. That's kind of point 2. You have to have beefed up detection, and it's not just about online monitoring, it's actual police work and detections required. And number 3, just on the point about chemical castration, I have every sympathy with that. And if we could be 100% sure on every time that this is the perpetrator, I would agree. But it's similar to the argument on capital punishment, which is when you implement an irreversible penalty.
But chemical castration is not irreversible. Chemical castration, it lasts for as long as you're taking these chemicals, and then once you stop taking the chemicals, by and large, things return back to normal. So it's not, I'm not chopping your bits off, although, to be fair, I probably wouldn't be adverse to that, I'll be honest with you anyway. So, yeah, I think that it's a perfectly sensible idea.
Well, I think that's one then for the MPs. The line I would just draw is where there is a sense that at any point something is irreversible. My fear is for injustice, because the justice system doesn't cover itself in glory too often.
But if you see, this is one of the things I cannot. And one of the other things, by the way, that concerned me. Get this in this report. So this report is basically by the Internet Watch Foundation. Listen to this. It's saying that it's called the IWF. It took action to remove more than 250,000 web pages last year. And are you ready? Because it really concerned me. 3/4 of them contained self-generated imagery where the child is manipulated into recording their own abuse, right? I cannot get my head around parents in this country, right, that let their children go online unsupervised. I cannot comprehend why a parent would let a child have a smartphone unmonitored, and then they'll say, oh, well, you know, I'm a bit busy with work, or, oh, you know, I do have like a vague look. You cannot let children into the wild west of the world, because it's not just your hometown, it's the world, without keeping them safe. And I feel like parents need to be doing more as well to protect their children.
The unspoken angle of this as well is the fact that, correct me if I'm wrong, nowhere in the online harms bill does it come down on the legal adult porn companies who have been hosting child exploitation material for years. For example, when Pornhub took millions of videos off its platform because it was proven to have underage rape on its platform. Likewise, OnlyFans have had to admit they've had multiple underage accounts, even though you are meant to sign up with some sort of passport and credit card. They haven't been policing this thing properly. And the disturbing fact of the matter is that little tick box that says, you're 18, are you? Can you access this site? It stops absolutely no children. The average age of viewing is 11 going onto these websites. And these websites factor in the addiction from a young age into their profit margins. So if the government were really concerned about underage exploitation, both uploading and using, they would go after those porn companies in a bill, but they haven't.
I think the key, there is a lot that can be done around liability for tech providers, and that where tech providers are effectively publishers. If you're this station, if you are a newspaper, there's a liability about what you have on your on what you're broadcasting and what you're publishing. And I think there is an aspect there in the online harms bill. I know there's a sort of fierce debate about this, but where there should be some level of liability.
The other area that I want to explore on this, because I'm pretty disgusted by it actually, is what I feel is like the sexualization of children, because I feel that in various different components of society, there is this thing, whether it's shops selling padded bras for children, whether it's grown men dressing as sexualised drag characters to read to children, or whether it's your fashion houses like Balenciaga doing fashion shoots with children holding bondage teddy bears, whilst papers containing information about child sex abuse are scattered on papers. Harry Styles for Gucci posing in teddy bear t-shirts alongside toddler mattresses. It repulses me, and it makes me worry, Atul, whether or not we're tiptoeing. Well, we're not even tiptoeing. It's not even subtle. We're going headlong into sexualising children.
I think it is a concern. One thing about how things are different to the past, I'd just caution that in the past there was a lot of this as well. I mean, there used to be mainstream shows where toddlers, would dress up, or very young children of 5 or 6 would be dressed up like pop stars and sing. This used to be on prime time on ITV. I remember it when I was a kid, and it was weird then, and it's even weirder in retrospect. That sort of behaviour, I agree, the sexualisation of children is a major issue, and it's compounded by what happens online and the absence of kind of safeguards there. I don't think anyone would disagree with that.
But what what is going on in society? Because to me, it seems to be mainstream. Like I've just given examples then, big fashion houses using bondage teddies with children. You know, you've got a show on Channel 4 that's getting criticised at the moment. Grown adults stripping naked in front of children, apparently to educate them about real bodies. I think it's weird, and I don't understand why more people are not saying enough now, pack it in. Children are children and adults are adults. Get a grip, create some separation and protect these kids.
I don't know if you're aware of the Danish version as well, because it's not just the UK Channel 4 that's doing this. There's one in Denmark and there's one in the Netherlands.
And there's been a huge outcry about that one as well.
Yeah, because one of the episodes, the gender identity episode, didn't do a background check and a convicted paedophile took part and he's had to go back to prison because he's obviously violated his parole. What's happened here is under the guise of inclusivity, people are being blinded to obvious scenarios where children have been put in vulnerable positions around adults that would like to harm them. And I hesitate to say that there has been a pincer movement for the normalisation of paedophilia. There has been a TED talk from a German academic who has said that they are just persecuted individuals. There's the acronym minor attracted persons to try and destigmatise it. And also, as you referred to a Drag Queen Story Hour, the original thing of Drag Queen Story Hour, one of the Vanguard members, Little Miss Hot Mess, who is now a best-selling author of The Hips on the Drag Queen Go Swish, 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 which is on the New York school board curriculum for 3 and up, they wrote a paper called Drag Pedagogy, and in it they say that Drag Queen Story Hour is to disrupt the reproductive futurity of the nuclear family, introduce children to adoptive drag families, and the final line is, we are going to leave a trail of glitter that will never come out of the carpet. That seems to me like an explicit threat to sexualise children. It's disturbing.
I'll make 2 points here. One, again, to say that things aren't, this isn't entirely new. Back in the early 80s, when there was when gay rights and LGBT rights were in a completely different place. There were movements struggling for those rights, but then also within that mix, unfortunately, people like the Paedophile Information Exchange got traction, and they were pushed out. And that's really what needs to happen again. My point here is that it's not new. This has always been there. It was pushed out once. It needs to be pushed out again. And just one point on Drag Queen Story Hour. Very sympathetic here to avoid kind of putting young children in sexual in a sexual context. There's nothing wrong, to my mind, if someone wants to dress up just and read a story to a child, just not provocatively and sexually.
No, and I saw that viral video, I think we discussed it on here actually, where people were taking their babies to this performance.
Kebaba rave.
Yeah, where grown men in G-strings or whatever it was are sexually gyrating in front of children. I think there's something matter with you upstairs.